Breaking news here on a Tuesday afternoon. Michigan football head coach Jim Harbaugh has reportedly agreed to a 4-game suspension to start the 2023 college football season. As we are live here just around 2:30 Eastern on Tuesday, the details are being agreed to. The T's are being crossed. The I's are dotted. The lawyers are talking to each other. But all things on the surface have been agreed to from what we know and was originally broken by Ross Dellinger from Yahoo Sports. He says Michigan coach Jim Harbaugh and the NCAA are working towards a negotiated resolution that is expected to see him suspended 4 games this season in penalties stemming from alleged false statements he originally made to investigators. Sources tell Yahoo Sports. Moments later, Dellinger said a previous Harbaugh staff member, Mike McDonald, who's now the defensive coordinator with the Baltimore Ravens, and 2 current Michigan staff members who we'll tell you about here in a second have agreed to sanctions as well, sources tell Yahoo. So that is the news. We're going to dive deep into it here in a second, but I want you guys to comment the live chat, or we're going to put this portion of the show on the channel as an on-demand video that you can watch anytime. Give me your one-word reaction to this Jim Harbaugh suspension news, either the live chat or in the comments. Let me know what you guys think. I think it's absolutely disgrace. I think it's BS, right? It is. It's a disgrace. It's BS. I got a lot of one words, but I think just disgrace. Disgrace is what I think the NCAA coming after Jim Harbaugh for the silliest of sanctions. It's an absolute disgrace to the sanctity of the sport and further sullies the reputation of the NCAA. Already, up there with the WHO, the least credible public institutions in America, and they continue to do so by going after a program like Michigan, who seemingly does most things right compared to all the other programs we all know out there that do it wrong. Give me your one-word reaction. Mine is disgraceful. Sherrone Moore, in line, I would think, to be Michigan's interim coach and new tight end coach Grant Newsome, been with the program for like a decade at this point on the coaching staff as a grad assistant and then second year as a assistant coach, the tight end coach, face sanctions. Now, as of 2:25 p.m. here on Tuesday, we don't know what those sanctions are. Could they be, some sort of suspended from a few practices? Could it be they're not able to recruit? They aren't allowed to go on in-home visits or can't be present at official visits? I hope that's what it is, because if it's a suspension of those guys, then Michigan staff is down even further, and Sherrone Moore won't be given the opportunity to step in as Michigan's interim head coach and kind of show what he can do as the head man leading Michigan in their first 4 games of what should be a historic 2023 season. As we mentioned, too, Baltimore Ravens defensive coordinator Mike McDonald, Michigan's DC for just the 2021 season. They can't really do anything to him because he's in the NFL now, but given a 1-year show cause penalty, which means that if he were to return to college football, that his next school or next job could face sanctions. He could be suspended if he returns. His suspension or whatever Sherrone Moore and Grant Newsome gets, I'm guessing that's what Mike McDonald will get if he were to return to college football in a coaching manner. Warde Manuel has made a statement. He says, "We are continuing to work cooperatively with the NCAA staff on an enforcement matter. At this time, we cannot comment further on any aspect of the matter." Guys, such a politician, Warde Manuel. Why don't you take a stance and say we support Jim Harbaugh? We don't think we did anything wrong, and something may come out of it, but we just want to get this behind us because we've got a national championship caliber team. And it's kind of a weak statement from Warde Manuel, who is not necessarily Jim Harbaugh's most favorite guy over the last 2.5 years coming out of that 2-4 2020 COVID season. Here's the schedule looks like. So we've got the first 4 games of the year that Harbaugh will be suspended for unless something drastic changes, unless they let him, appeal it. But it doesn't seem like that since it's a plea deal. This is the appeal. East Carolina, they were in a conference championship game last year. First 4 games all at home. So Jim Harbaugh will miss Michigan's first 4 home games this year. UNLV, Bowling Green, Rutgers. I would expect those to be 4 relatively easy games, but East Carolina was a surprising team last year. The spread of that game, though, is 5 touchdowns, 35-36 points from Michigan, East Carolina in that September 2nd opener at the Big House. Harbaugh's going to return on September 30th at Nebraska. You remember 2 years ago. Michigan went 11-1 in the regular season, 12-1 Big Ten champions. One of the tougher games that they did win was that Nebraska game. Needed a turnover late, needed quite a few miracle plays to be right there to get the win in Lincoln, Nebraska at a night game with a field goal late in the game. That is when Jim Harbaugh will return to the field for Michigan, though not suspended for practice, right? As we were live here, we got the report that even though he's suspended for these 4 games, he is not suspended for a practice. John Blaze, I see you. When we get through this news, we'll be back on that super chat. Those of you watching later, John Blaze just hit us with a $100 super chat. Make sure you guys are always watching the show, though. We're going to continue telling you more on what we know on this story. Breaking news from the Michigan Football Report. This is why you subscribe to the show. Off-season coverage, but the season is less than 40 days away. We're going to talk about all the latest recruiting rumors, including Aaron Scott committing to either Michigan or Ohio State coming up in 5 days. And then coming in August, we will have fall practice updates. We will take you inside the walls of Schembecker Hall, onto the practice field, tell you who's doing well, what the game plan looks like with and without Jim Harbaugh, and what the depth chart looks like going into that September 2nd season opener versus East Carolina in the Big House. As you saw there, the first 4 games, they are cakewalks, all right? They are cakewalks, and Michigan probably could be coached by Brady Hoke or Rich Rodriguez with the talent and depth on this team and the caliber of the opponents that they have in those first 4 games and still win them. But then Jim Harbaugh comes back, and then are things different then? As the team, did they used to the interim coach? How does that change things? Does this team rally around Jim Harbaugh, or does it kind of create a blip in an otherwise dream season that we're looking at that kind of makes this team falter and fall apart down the stretch as you get into the month of October? After that September stretch of 4 home games, then at Nebraska, Harbaugh returns. You go on the road for a second back-to-back of 2 road games at Minnesota, a pretty good Minnesota team. I think the first 2 months this year, that game in Minneapolis will be Michigan's toughest test over the first 8 weeks of the season. They've got a bye to end the month of October, the Halloween weekend, October 28th. Then it gets a little tougher. Rematch the Big Ten championship game against an 8-6 Purdue team on November 4th. Then you go on the road to what should be a preseason top 5, top 6, maybe top 7 Penn State team that will compete for a Big Ten championship in their own right. They are stacked on defense. They've got a great offensive line, maybe the best offensive lineman in the country. 2 very, very explosive sophomore running backs and a redshirt freshman, sophomore, I guess he's sophomore, he didn't redshirt, quarterback in Drew Aller, who was one of the top quarterbacks in the country in the 2022 recruiting class. You go on the road to Maryland, back home against Ohio State. Those Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan should be 3 of the top 6 or 7 teams in the preseason poll. So that's a hell of a stretch down the end of the season. Big Ten championship game, college football playoff either in New Orleans or in Pasadena. Then you've got the national championship game in Houston or bust. Before we continue, guys, make sure you share this video if you want to help us grow the audience and support the show. Share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it on Instagram, share it in your text threads. Easiest way to do it, we'll show you how to do it on Twitter, but you can choose any of the icons. Click that little share icon below the video. Your little menu pop up if you're on iPhone or Android in particular, and just hit post the Twitter icon. Click the Twitter icon, post to Twitter. If you want to tag me, it's at James Yoder. I'll get in there here in a few minutes and retweet you. Share it to Facebook as well. You've got those Michigan football text chains. Send this link to this message. Let people watch this video or our live video as well. Go ahead and share that now. Help support the show. Get some viral grassroots marketing by doing that if you can, if you'd be nice enough to do so. More from Dellinger's story, what he says on the when, the why, and the how of this story. Harbaugh's impending suspension is centered on an NCAA investigation into recruiting violations committed by the Wolverines staff. By he and Wolverines staff members, the NCAA enforcement staff alleged that Harbaugh was dishonest about the recruiting violations in his initial meeting with investigators. Dellinger continues, a quick resolution broke down in January after Harbaugh refused to admit he lied to NCAA staff. So last fall, they talked to him. They think he lied. They came back after the season and said, Jim, we got you. We know you lied. He refused to admit it. Whether he did or didn't, he refused to admit it. The 59-year-old coach has maintained he didn't recall the events when first speaking with investigators, but that he was never purposely dishonest. This is absolutely sickening. I really do think that it is. I think it's a shame. I think it's kind of a joke. It further proves how the NCAA has just no credibility at all, that you go after Michigan and Jim Harbaugh, who seem to do things right, who seem to care about their players, who seem to not pay guys, who don't have allegations like what's going on at Northwestern, or have things going on like have happened at Ohio State or Clemson maybe, or most notably Auburn or Georgia or Tennessee or Alabama. To come after Michigan, I think it's an absolute sham, and to suspend Jim Harbaugh for 4 games, I think is a further of a sham. They don't seem to be, in the NCAA's credit, in some regard, they're not necessarily going after the crime. They're going after the cover-up, it seems, by suspending him for 4 games for lying or being intentionally dishonest, which is a politically correct term for the word lie. The NCAA, though, for me, my takeaway, they're an absolute joke. They're an absolute sham of an organization. And if you saw Tennessee got suspended, or got some sanctions, recruiting sanctions, other things last week, part of the takeaway was the Attorney General in the state of Tennessee told the NCAA that if their sanctions had anything to do with postseason bans, the state of Tennessee would sue the NCAA because they don't have jurisdiction over state of Tennessee student athletes and whether or not they can play in postseason games. I don't think they do in Michigan either. So I think the Michigan governor, Attorney General should maybe play a little hardball themselves, but I doubt that they will. In general, though, this comes back, a lot of this stemmed from 2020, that they wouldn't let fully healthy athletes on campus. They wouldn't let fans in the stands. Coaches were wearing masks on the sidelines, but they're pulled down below the chin the entire thing. It was all charade. 17-year-old kids should have been able to go and figure out where they wanted to go to college. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask. It didn't really matter to me. At the end of the day, by the time these alleged incidents happened, July, August, September, into November of 2020, we knew the risks for fully healthy 17-year-old athletes. And the fact the NCAA still kept this charade going well into the 2021 season, I think is an absolute disgrace, and Michigan is now paying the price for it, but maybe it will be a rallying cry for this team. And we talking about cheeseburgers here. Michigan and Jim Harbaugh get suspended for 4 games, and if he doesn't get paid for those 4 games, which we don't know yet, we're talking about $3-4 million that he's going to give up. We talking about cheeseburgers, not steak that I love. What's some other good food here, Jake? Not lasagna, okay? Not a nice seafood, not a lobster, okay? Not a lobster. We talking about cheeseburgers from a local Michigan restaurant. Harbaugh pulled out his card, swiped it. It's probably like $26 for 3 recruits to have cheeseburgers and fries at a local Michigan restaurant. When they came, they just kind of around campus because they couldn't officially visit Michigan to figure out where they're going to college. NCAA's disgrace. We're talking about cheeseburgers. This is an absolute sham. And I go back to Warde Manuel. I don't think he has the guts to lead a major Michigan football or athletic program like Michigan if he's letting his head coach get suspended for 4 games when we're talking about cheeseburgers. Join with me if you feel the same. All together now. F the NCAA. I'm going to put it in the live chat. I'm going to put it in the comments on the video we'll put up on the channel here in a few minutes. F the NCAA, or just type F if you want, but get it in the live chat. I'm sick of this. I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to talk to my wife. I'm going to talk to my legal counsel, the Yoder Circle of Trust. I'm going to talk to Jack's parents to make sure they know that, we're not running a criminal organization. But I may be going to the NCAA headquarters at some point in the month of August and chaining myself to somewhere in the building to free Jim Harbaugh, because I don't want this to impact his future. Type F the NCAA in the comments or the live chat. But what is Jim Harbaugh's future? Does this push him to leave college football? He's flirted with the NFL the last 2 years. He said, the itch is still there. The itch is still there. And then he came back. I'm not going to do it again. But he did it again. He did it again after the 2022 season. He looked at different jobs, right? The Colts and maybe the Arizona Cardinals, though I didn't hear much about that one. What were some other jobs that were open last year that he talked to? I don't remember all of them. The Houston Texans, the Colts, yeah. Vikings the year before, of course, the Raiders and the Giants the year before. We're just kind of whispered out there. It seemed he went the furthest down the path with the Vikings. Who was the team that said Harbaugh reached out to him? I can't remember who it was. The owner said, Harbaugh reached, was the Jags maybe? Or no, could be right. I can't remember who was the Harbaugh reached out to the owner, just kind of escaping me as we're trying to focus on this. But is this the straw that breaks the camel's back for Jim Harbaugh? The Panthers, that's right, the Carolina Panthers. Having the first pick in the draft, Harbaugh reached out to him, but wasn't the right fit, wasn't the right guy for them. Okay, cool. I think that this could be the thing that breaks the camel back. That Jim Harbaugh says, look, I've been doing things the right way. The NCAA is going to suspend me for a third of the season of my best team for cheeseburgers and playing a little coy when it comes to, interviewing with investigators, which he technically didn't even have to do, right? You don't have to. You could just say no comment. And now he gets suspended 4 games, and his best team he's going to have is likely, for the most part, leaving the program, right? J.J. McCarthy, Donovan Edwards, Blake Corum, probably Junior Colson, right? We'll still have a decent team in 2024, but I think quarterback, running back, wide receiver, Cornelius Johnson, Ruben Wilson, maybe it's the thing that pushes Harbaugh off the edge where either he leaves the program and goes to the NFL, or he just takes a year off football and says he's going to recoup and look at the best jobs. I see you, Josiah Kiter, with the 50 super chat. We'll get to you and John Blaze in just one moment. Guys, this for me seems eerily similar to the Urban Meyer situation in 2018. So if you recall, Zach Smith, who was the wide receiver coach, was got in some domestic violence dispute. I think ultimately, for the most part, a lot of what happened with Zach, he was exonerated for a lot of it. I think he was messed up in a messy divorce that became public, and some of the stuff that he was accused of, wasn't actually true. And I actually think Zach is a pretty awesome guy, right? I think he's a funny guy. I think he's a nice guy. Everyone's got their troubles in their past, and he went through a divorce, but it spilled over into the Ohio State program. Urban Meyer took a 3-game suspension, right? Ryan Day became the interim head coach, and what happened, right? 9-10 weeks after Urban Meyer got that suspension, Ryan Day, the coach, trickles down right after the Ohio State-Michigan game that Urban Meyer is stepping away from college football, is taking away, and Ryan Day becomes the next head football coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes. Could the same thing happen with Sharon Moore or Mike Hart or Jesse Minter? We will have to see.